started. Welcome to Buddha's Center. Vesak, happy Vesak, happy Buddha Day. So that's the day that most Buddhist religions around the world, I was talking with Lobsang Samten this morning, and he was saying that he really does rely on this date, and he feels that it's most accurate. He feels like the Theravadan tradition, in terms of the calendar and so forth, really pay a lot of attention to the details of those things. On their calendar, today is the celebration of Buddha's birth, death, and parinirvana. Whereas in the Tibetan calendar, it's a little bit later on, and we'll celebrate both. But there's something that's quite unique about this particular day today. Not only do we say it's Vesak, it's the celebration of Buddha, but today there's a lunar eclipse going on. And when you look at the teachings in the higher tantras, and specifically Kala Chakra, you'll find there's a very special connection to a lunar eclipse and the ability for the right and the left channel to process wind simultaneously or at the same time. Usually, according to the higher tantras, we breathe, through our right and through our left, and it kind of alternates. But according to Kala Chakra system, and I just heard this from Shadow Rinpoche's teaching, there's this idea that during the lunar eclipse, somehow both of those channels start to work. And because it's the subtle consciousness and subtle wind that really carries forward from lifetime to lifetime, then that's where the karma is. So the karma is connected to the wind. I'm not an expert. I don't want to get into too many details, but the more kind of flow of wind, right, the more potential karma there is. That's one reasoning behind what I'm about to say. So therefore, on a day such as today, we already have what's called the time of increase happening, because it's the 15th of the month and it's Buddha's, birth, death, and parinirvana. So we would say that no matter what, it's a time of multiplication. So we would say that any virtue that you engage in because of this special time would be multiplied by 100,000 times. And there's some reasoning behind that. And if we look at, how we create virtue, it's in relationship to sentient beings and, causing them to be happy, right? So it's said that, in some of the teachings, that when we on these special days, certain beings come down and can kind of view us on these special days. Some of them are called like the 4 Dharma kings you've probably read about. Before you do a retreat, you set them up outside to protect your retreat area. You set up a protection wheel around your retreat place, and you put the 4 Dharma kings out there. So it's said that during these times, they come down to kind of see what human beings are doing. And then, when they see them doing virtue, it causes them to rejoice. And then their rejoicing just kind of like multiplies. So their happiness and joy of them seeing these good things happening multiplies, in terms of their communication to others, other beings and so forth. So that's one point as to why during this special time, it says in scriptures that it could be a time of increase or a time of multiplication. It's because these higher beings are rejoicing in what we're doing. It's causing them joy. It's causing them happiness and there's during these specific times, they're viewing us more than other times. So this is one explanation as to the increase. And then the other explanation in terms of increase has to do with now there's a lunar eclipse, right? So now you not only have this 100,000, but it says in the tantras that, during this period of time when the winds, think about, if you have a tube, right, that water goes through, only so much can go through it if it's very small, right? But imagine if you made it twice as large, how much water could run through it. So think about, during this time, because of this eclipse happening, according to these higher systems, our channels are operating differently. Our winds are flowing a little bit differently. And it's kind of like that tube that only could have a little water going through it has doubled in size, and now it's flowing, through it in a really, really like strong fashion, if that makes any sense. So it's for that reason, when we engage in a virtue, it has that much power behind it to plant, that much more power in it behind it to kind of plant into the consciousness to become a potential existence. So it's really forcefully due to these winds creating this greater opportunity. So not only we have these higher beings rejoicing during these times, but because it's even a more special time than normal, we have this lunar eclipse going on that affects our winds and channels according to the higher systems. And Chadha Rinpoche said it was very interesting. They all got together during a lunar eclipse one time, and they all went outside and they got together and they tested it. And they said, do we feel, as though we're equally breathing, right, through our right and left nostrils? Do we really feeling a difference? And they really established that they said, they felt this difference. So I just not challenge you all, but, try it out, right? Go try it for yourself. See tonight, we have this, you probably won't see it, I think, according to science. It started earlier today. I don't really know science that well, but try it, right? See if you notice a difference in your ability to kind of breathe, more freely. See if you can establish just a sign that you could see without any kind of clairvoyance. There's something different going on inside the inner workings of me, so it's just interesting when you have these testable things and you can check out. Don't base the rest of your faith upon it, of course, because our karma is, creating all of the experiences that we're having. It may just not be our day to experience that. But it's really clear in the teachings, and there's a big explanation of why and a lot of symbolism behind it. But it's interesting to see that there are those 2 points, that we're making others really, really happy. They're viewing it, and they're more viewing it during these special times for whatever reason. And Buddha said karma is more difficult to understand than emptiness, because it takes an omniscient being to understand it. So why these beings are coming down at certain time, I don't know. This is something that the Buddha said. But it's very interesting that there are explanations behind these things. It's not just like, well, you get 1,000,000 virtues for every one you do. Good luck. There's actual reasoning behind it. And then, of course, intention has to be behind it. And then a debate starts if you're not a Buddhist, right? Then how does that work in terms of understanding, knowing, and intention? But yeah, there's these really clear points that are made, and it is these are points that are debated, but then understood, at a certain level. There's extremely hidden phenomena, and manifest phenomena. And the extremely hidden really requires a yogic kind of perception to understand it. It's not something we can just ordinarily see, relying on some kind of a sign and some kind of a reason. So that being said, today I just really want to honor Shakyamuni Buddha, and also because of this special connection to the winds and so forth. We all, have connection to White Tara. Rinpoche gave all of us White Tara initiation. So even though we don't have the same explanations, maybe there are in the Action Tantra. We have the yoga with and without signs. In the higher tantras, we have the generation and completion stage. So there's a little bit of a different points made, less emphasis on, kind of the wind, the channels and drops and so forth, until you get to the most emphasis that you find in the higher tantras. So, but I think it's really auspicious that we can do some Tara mantras together. So today I've chosen that we do the King of Prayers together, the prayer of noble conduct. You see this prayer mentioned all over the place. And not a lot of, people know where it's from. We just kind of take it for granted. We call it the King of Prayers. But it's from the Avatamsaka Sutra. It's actually from the last chapter of that sutra. And there's a story that's going on between a couple of different beings. But the story kind of goes like this. So there's a student who's a seeker, looking for truth, looking for the perfection of wisdom, looking to understand the pathways, and his name is Sudana. He's a student of Manjushri, and everyone's hanging around together at this time. Manjushri is hanging around Shakyamuni and the Sukhavati and so forth. So everybody's around at this point in time. Generally speaking, from a sutra explanation standpoint. So Sudana is in search of gurus. So Manjushri has given him guidance to go seek out teachers, and he goes through 52 teachers. And each teacher sends him to the next teacher, and they're all teaching different things about the path, about the Bodhisattva path, and so forth. And the last one he gets to, so the story goes, and I'm not an expert, in history or storytelling, but I thought it would be nice to, I've heard so many of these things. It'd be nice to, share some of that. And his last teacher is Samantabhadra. And Samantabhadra is known as like the best, the most wonderful bodhisattva for making offerings and making aspirations. And really a bodhisattva who understands the profound, vast and profound pathways that are necessary within the perfection of wisdom in order to become a Buddha. And then he gets to Samantabhadra, and then Samantabhadra says this, the prayer of noble conduct. Then, Sadhana has all of these realizations that occur. He sees, within every pore of Samantabhadra, the Dharma and so forth. I encourage you to read it. But yeah, it's the last chapter where you'll find that. And this is from a sutra, and the Buddha is telling this, the Buddha's, telling stories. That's what sutras are. The Buddha's saying, so why is the Buddha telling this story? The Buddha's saying that, this is what, those who aspire to the highest thing, this is how they aspire, if you will. Samantabhadra is the most excellent bodhisattva. He makes the most excellent aspirations. So may we make aspirations that are as good as his, in this case, almost, right? So that's how we're reading it. We're reading it like Samantabhadra is our hero, because he's really can make the best aspirations. And in his aspirations can include the subtle and vast paths, and in a complete fashion. In the Samantabhadra dedication, King of Noble Prayers, rather, Prayer of Noble Conduct, the Sanche Mulang contains really all of the pathways when you look at it. And it can be interpreted in a very, very profound way also. You'll see very, very long teachings that are given on this, and teachings into the perfection of wisdom and emptiness and so forth related to this. And you see this mentioned in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, right? When you're about to do the 7-limb prayer, it says, begin by doing the prayer of noble conduct. You see this prayer mentioned in Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, entrance to the middle way. In the first Bodhisattva ground, it says that the Bodhisattvas sustain this ground, or this ground comes about through the aspirations and dedications made in the prayer of noble conduct, and mentions this. I think it's in the 5th stanza, something like that. You'll find it right at the beginning of Entrance to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti. So this has been a really, really important prayer. So we're going, and yes, good point. And this is something Rinpoche loves so much to do. He would, call us in and say, please, 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 can we do the prayer of noble conduct together in Tibetan? And we had this kind of running joke that, he really liked when Lori would chant. And we had this running joke that, she was the reincarnate of the great, great singer. And it was, a little tongue in cheek too, because, she's not really a singer. So we'll just leave it at that. So it's just, it was a running joke in the house, but we recited this prayer quite a bit. This prayer was recited 3 times at the hospital before Rinpoche's passing. Once when we arrived there, he and I did it together, kind of. Once when he was intubated, and then right near the end of his right before his passing, Lori and I read it. So really special prayer, and I hope that we can all gain millions and millions and millions of virtues, right? And we look at how we gain virtue. It's every moment, every moment we're gaining, every second we're gaining virtue when we're reading something so virtuous. So really, let's try to set our motivation that we're saying this prayer and we're doing these practices for the sake of all sentient beings, and that may we be able to, if we can't already make aspirations like this, and we don't know what these aspirations mean, may we be able to understand what these aspirations mean and then make the same aspirations, right? When we look at the Samantabhadra dedication in the prayer book, right? Where it basically says, I don't really know how to make a great dedication, so I'll make one, like Manjushri and Samantabhadra, right? We see that in the Samantabhadra dedication in the prayer book. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. So here we're trying to emulate the knowledge of, that's what we're doing in this prayer, and you'll see that in here, that point in here as we're reading it. But without further ado, let's turn to the Tibetan. And everybody's got that. So we'll do it once through in the Tibetan, then we'll do it once in English, and then we'll do 108 Tara mantras. And I think that that'll be wonderful. And let's hope that this somehow, this virtue that we're creating, if we're looking at it in a collective sense, can help to kind of send out collective waves of happiness to all sentient beings, our friends, enemies, and neutrals. And, may this be a cause for their suffering to be removed, may we take that on. As we take that on, it destroy our self-cherishing attitude, as if it's burning up and just turns into soot and smoke. And then we imagine that, we're giving these prayers and these aspirations to all sentient beings because that's what they'll need too in order to become Buddhas. They'll need to, want to make aspirations like this, then be able to make aspirations like this in order to become fully happy. So anyway, without further ado, let's try this out. I wish there was a way, and maybe later on we can find out if there's a way to do Zoom where it doesn't make a mess when everybody's doing it together because of the timing thing. I think everything that I've seen where people have done it have been recorded separately, then put together as a unit when they've done, music and stuff. So anyway, if there's something I don't know, we can learn later. All right, so let's get started. Baba Zambo Jubi Molani Jelbo Jagagido Arya Raja Sarya Pranadana Raza Pakedo Baba Zambo Jubi Molani Jelbo Jambe Juna Juba Laja Zelo Jene Zada Juju Jite Na Sonje pa mi zenje don da ji ma lu de da dan je la lu dang a yi dan we ja ji o zambo ji be mu lan do da ji je wa dan je yi ji ngu zon do Genji de nye le ra du ma yi je wa gun la ra du ja ze lo
du ji de na du ni zen ji na zan ji zi ji u na ju ba da de da ju ji ye na ma lu ba dan je je wa da ji gan wa mu de da nga ba mi ze ja zo na gan ji yen la ja zo da dun ji ye wa gun ji yin den ra ju jin je wa je ba dan je da ji du me do dan ba je wa dan ba dan zi nian nan dan ju ba de ju da ma me ju dan ju bu dan ba yi je wa de da la ni ju ba ji na za dan ba nan dan je jo dan je ma bu ma ri ra nyang ba dan wu ba ji ba ba be yo jun ji je wa de da la ni ju ba ji ju ba ga na la me ja je wa de da je wa dan je la ya mu san bo ju la de be do da ji je wa gu la cha ze ju ba ji de ja je dan de mu wang yi ni lu dang a dan de ji ni ji ja di ba da ji ji ba ji ji ba de da dan ji da ji su zo ja zhu ju jie wa gun dan zan ji zi ran ji nan dan le dan mi lu dan rơ wa gun ji zu nong gan la yan de da gun ji je su da yi ra nga na je je ji den zhe ma na yang ju ren ba zan ji ma jia ni ngo bo de da da ji dan ji la gu lu la na me pa gu bo gu nhà niên da dong an che de da la zhe wa go la ben jin ji wei ji ye wa jin ji de nie zhu ba yan da ji de mo ra ja zu wa ji jia ze wa dan ju jin sha ba dan jie zi yi ran gong xin zu wa yi ge wa jun ze da ji ji sa ba dan je da ji shang ju shi ngo de be zan ye nan dan ju ju yi ji den da na gan ju ju ba ju nga ya ma jun de da ra nyo wa zan zo shang ju rin ba zan ji ju je je ga le jin nan jin ye ba de da ja je yong su da ba ju yang ju ji wang zhen jie jie wa dan zan jie zi ji ra deng an wa shu je je zen jian gan nan jin ye ba de da da du ni mi de wa ju yo wa gong ji zhe ji de nan ni dong ba ju ji ri wan zhe shu jiang zhi zhi ba da ni da zhe ji zhe wa gong du ji wa jian ba ju se ra gong du ji bo ji wa na da du da ni ra du zhong wa shu ye wa gong ji jie zu lu ju de zang bo ju ba yong zi zi ji ji zi jin ju ba ji me yang da ba da du ma nyang ju me ju ba shu la yi ge dan lu dan ne jin je ju bon da da mi ge nan da Rwa gonji janan ji zamba dan je ge du da ji ju den du ne jin ba re jin la ra zun de jan ju zen ni na yang je ma ju di ba ga nan ji ba ju ba da de da ma lu yong zu jong wa ju le da nyong mon de ji le na le zhe xin ji den zhe wa nan zi yang ji da be mo zhi ni sha ba ji ni da nan ga do ba me da ji xin ji jian dan zhe nan ji zang ba nie zun du nie ra du zhi wa ji de wa da la zhe wa gun gu xin zhe wa dan zhe la ni ben ba ji zhang zhu zhi ba yong zi zu jie ji zen jian da ji shi dang zhen ba zhu zang bo zhu ba da ni ra zun ji ma ong gia ba gong du zhu ba zhu da ji zhi dang zong ba gang zhu ba de da ni da da ba zhu ba shu lu dang a nan da ni zen ji jiang zhu ba da da mu lan zhu tu jie da la men ba du be zhu bu da zang bo zhu ba ra du dong ba na de da da yang da du zhe ba shu de da da ji na yang yi me yu san jie se ji go wei gong bo na ngu zong da du da ji jie wa da ma ong ye ba gong du mi yo wa de da la yang ju ba jia jie ji ye wa nan ji dan bei zhu zin ji xiang zhu zhu ba gong du nan wa ji zang bo zhu ba nan ba zhong wa yang ma ong ge ba gong du ji ba ji zi ba dan jie du yang go wa nan zu nan ye jie dan ni me ze ni da dan jie ra din zi nan da dan yun den gun ji mi se zu du ju du ji de na du nie ji nan de jin de zan ji me ja zan ji na zan ye ze ji u na ju ba la zhan ju ji ba ju jin da wa ji de da ma lu dan jie ju zu yang da zan jin la du zun se nie ji san ye jia zuo xin nan jia zuo dang ge ba jia zuo zhi jin ra du ju sun ji yan la jia zu jia ge ji jie wa gun ya yan la nan da ba zhe wa gun ji zang ba ji xin yang zang jie sun la da du ju ba ji de zom je be je wa dan je da go lo su na ra du go wa yi de da ji yang zu yang mi ze la lu yi de ji da jia ra du ju ma ong ye ba nan je ju ba yang ge ji 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 da jiang ju ba ji ga yang ge ba du zun zi de da ge ji jia xie ji ni ju ba ji du zom je ba ni zen ji gan de da ji 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 la da ji da da du de da ji ni ju yu la ju ma ju be nan da do ji ju ga yang du zong da ji xin gu ba de da du ji den du ngon ba tru de da ma lu ju nan dan ji du je wa da ji xin na ku la ju ga yang ma jun ji den zhong ma nan de da ko nya nian de ba ra du ji da dong gong bo gong ji zhong du da ji yo Kundo nuwe zudru do nandan, gone gui debe do dadan, Gondo yonden jobe do nandan, gondo jaba jamba da jido, Kunege we zo nanda dadan, jaba me ba jobe yeshedo, Shera dadan din zinda daji, janju do na yanda jubaji, Lei do na yonzu da jeji, nyomo do na gondu jombaji, de ji do na de mera jeji, zambo jebe do nizo gaji, Jinan jazo nam ba da jejin, zenjen jazo da ni nam ba dru, Junan jazo ra du don jejin, yeje jazo ru dung ba je, Juba jazo nam ba da jejin, mulan jazo yunzun zung ba je, Sanje jazo ra du ju jeje, Yawa jazo mi ju je ba je, Yayan du zon je be je wa yi, Jan ju ju be mulan je dana, Sambo ju be jan ju zan je ne, De gon da ji ma lu zo ba ji, Yawa gon ji ze ji do wo ba, Gangi mini guntu zan je ja, Jeba de da zumba jebi je, Gewa de da dan je ra dungu, Ludang a dan yi jan nan da jin, Juba nan da jin na yon da pa, Ngo wa zambo jeba jin jawa, Jendra da jan de dan zumba jo, Kunege wa sambo jebe je, Jambe jini mulan jeba ji, Maung gyao pa guntu mi jo wa, De yi jawa malu zombo ji, Juba da ni se yu ma jo ji, Yun ten nan jan se zon me pa sho, Juba ze me bala ne ne jan de da juba dan che so wa ji, Nanga da lu juba ji zamba zen je ma lu dan yan de jin de, Ji zan de dan ya mun da juba da ji mulan da yan de zamo, Yan Jinan ta ye ba ren chen je te je wa na la pu lu da mi de we shu nan jan jin ji du nye ju ba bu wa be gang gi ngo we je bo de du ne jan ju ju ji je su ra mu shin len ji za yan de ba je ba nan su nan dan be jo du de jo ro Gangi sanjo mulan di dave di ning zon dan je pon wa jo de ni ro bo nyen ba bon wa yi na wa ta yi de an de jo don de da nye ba ra nye de wa zo me ze de yan de da le ba on kon to san po de yan Shin wa de da jin po mi so de shin jo Same nga po da yi di ba nan gang gi mi je wang gi je pa de yi zan bo chu pa nyo yon su zhang ye shi dog hair. Ye she dan se nan dan rin dan ka do nan dan den pa jo du da me te man po de mu do ji ten sun po ko nan chua jo chan ju ye wan jun du de nyo do so ne sen chen pen che du de du Shanju Sanje Colorado Go Nande Da Jeba Danje Do Gayan Sambo Jube Mulandi Janwa Dani Dundan Lona Yang Namba min ban san je jin jang zhe zhe la san ni ma je ji jiang be ba wu je da jian ba dang gong du san bu de yang de jin de da kong ji je su da lo jie ge wa de da tan jie ra du ngo de son je be je wa dan jie ji ngo wa gan la ju tu nga pa de da ji ge we sa wa de kun jang san po ju ji ra tu ngo wa ji da ni je we de je ju ba na di pa tan che da ni je sa te ngu son na wa da ye de ton ne de wa chen ji shin de ra tu do de son ne ni mu lan de da jan dan che ma lu ngun du jo wa sho de da ma lu da ji yon zu gan ji den ji si sen chen ben ba ji ye wei jin guo zang jin ga wa de be mo dan ba shi tu se le jie na wa da ye jie wei ngu zong du long den ba yang da ji te du zhou de ni da ji long den ra de ni zhu ba man bo jie wa zha jia yi lu yi du ji zhe zhe na ze yang sen jen na la ben ba man bo ji zang bo ji be mu lan da ba yi ge wa jun ze da ji ji sa ba de ni zhe we mu lan ge wa nan ji 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 dan jie zhou wa shu ga yang san bo ji ba de nu be zu nan da ye dan ba gan de de zhe wa de nie zhi wo xin wa na hu ba me be de na zhu zhu zhe mu lan jie bo de da zhe ji zu da ye zhe wa gun la ben jie xie gong du zang bo jian bei zhong zhi de ni zu ni na ma lu dong bo shu san jie gu zong ni bei jian la dang zhi ni mian zhe dian bei jian la dang dian de mi jie den bei jian la ji ji dang ge jian mu la ren ba zhou de a da ben za in ri a wa bo de na ye zo
Sorry about that. I got a dog hair in the throat. No, we're good now. So we'll go back to the start. And it's wonderful to think that all these wonderful beings read this prayer, right? And then when we read it in Tibetan, it's so wonderful to think that, Rinpoche read this prayer in Tibetan, and, all the Tibetans that, at one time or another has read this prayer, and definitely all of the monks and nuns read this prayer. Lama Tsongkhapa read this prayer. So we're reading these prayers in other languages to leave the imprints of the languages that they were prayed in of holy beings, right? And so that we can eventually, because still, if we are to die, now or even at our extended lifespan, however old we are, there's still so much more material available in Tibetan, right, than in English. So we have these imprints of this language. We are leaving the ability later to understand and read this language. And that's why you find at the beginning of all of the Tibetan prayers that were translated from Sanskrit, you always find in Sanskrit, it's called, in the language of India, it's called this. In Tibetan, it's called this. And the reason that they put that in the language of India in there is to, and then name it in Sanskrit, is to leave the imprint of Sanskrit in your mental continuum. Because it's said that all of the Buddhas will teach in Sanskrit. So it leaves that imprint of Sanskrit, and it leaves that imprint of the language that's left now that studies the Buddha the best. And that really is Tibetan language. If you look at, what's available, what's been taken from Sanskrit into Tibetan and what's still there, what's intact in the tantras and so forth. We really still have a very, very large canon of the Mahayana in the Tibetan language. So, and we're getting more and more in English and other languages and so forth. But really, we just have these commentaries on commentaries and just this analytical analysis, rather, that's been done on these texts in this language that we'll later be able to connect with these commentaries because of, we just read this in Tibetan. We've left imprints of it. And all of the holy beings read this prayer. So we've left imprints to connect with those holy beings who read this prayer. Because we're saying we want to, little old us don't have the ability to know what, a bodhisattva aspires to. And we can't say things as wonderfully as a bodhisattva could. So this is what I'll say. I'll say this. And it's almost like when we look at what Tantra is about, it's like pretending to be something, right? Until you are that. And this is like, well, this is what I'll aspire to until I aspire to it so that I can become a Buddha. So anyway, let's get started with it. The king of aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions, the Sanchu Mulam. It's from the Ganda Vyuha chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. That's the last chapter. Avatamsaka Sutra is huge. I mean, very, very, very large, many volumes. But this is the last chapter. And again, I told you the story that is kind of set up where Siddhana is sent by Manjushri to look for gurus, 52 gurus, meets with Samantabhadra, and then Samantabhadra says this. And then, we say, let's say this because Samantabhadra said that. Very, very interesting. But so let's get started. So it's from that chapter, which is the last chapter. And it says, in the language of India, Arya, Mbadra, Dasarya, Pranadana, Radza. And then it says in the language of Tibet, Papa Zampo Chupi Molanji Jelbo. Okay. So they saw, it's interesting, whoever did the English translation, saw the value in leaving the imprint of Sanskrit, leaving the imprint of Tibetan language, and then carrying on. So very interesting to see how lineages carry on. We're in the West and someone has chosen to approach this by looking at it, not just in terms of the Sanskrit and jumping over the Tibetans, right? But looking at it from the standpoint of lineage and looking at it from the standpoint of holy beings and saying, this is a staple within these holy beings. So this is, this has been translated into English from Tibetan, not from Sanskrit usually, right? So that the translator is paying homage to the language that he or she is using to bring this into English, and understanding it leaves the imprints, just like understanding the Tibetans understood the imprints of Sanskrit. So homage to Manjushri, the youthful. To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race, and all the directions of the universe through past and present and future, to every single one of you I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear, vivid here before my mind, and I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to all the Buddhas. In every atom reside as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them in their bodhisattva heirs, And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality, saluting them with an endless ocean of praise, with the sounds of an ocean of different melodies. I sing the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all of those who have gone to bliss. To every Buddha, I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, of beautiful garlands, of music and perfumed ointments, the best of parasols and the brightest of lamps and fine incense. To every Buddha, offerings, exquisite garments and the most fragrant scents, powdered incense heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry. Then the vast and surpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas, moved by the power of my faith and good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. Whatever negative actions I have committed while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance, with my body, my speech, and also with my mind, before you I confess and purify each and every one. With a heart full of delight, I rejoice in all the merits of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Prachika Buddhas, those in training and the Arhats beyond training, and every living being throughout the entire universe. You who are like beacons of light shining through the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all attachment, I exhort you, all of you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. Join my palms together, I pray, to you who intend to pass into nirvana, remain for eons, as many as the atoms in this world, and bring well-being and happiness to all living beings. What little virtue I have gathered through my homage, through offering confession and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. Let offerings be made to the Buddhas of the past and all who now dwell throughout the 10 directions of this universe. Let all who are yet to come swiftly fulfill their wishes and attain the stages of enlightenment and Buddhahood. Let as many worlds as there are in all the 10 directions transform into realms that are vast and utterly pure, filled with Buddhas who have sat before the mighty Bodhi tree. Around them, all their Bodhisattva sons and daughters. Let as many sentient beings there are in all 10 directions live always and forever in happiness and health. Let all beings meet the Dharma that befits them best, and so may all they hope to be fulfilled. As I practice the training for enlightenment, may I recall on my previous births and in my successive lives through death and through rebirth, may I always renounce the worldly life. Training in the footsteps of all the victorious Buddhas, may I bring good actions to perfection and my moral conduct be taintless and pure, never lapsing and always free from fault. In the language of gods, nagas, yaksas, in the language of demons and humans too, in however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Taming my mind and striving in the paramitas, I shall never forget the bodhicitta. May all my harmful actions and the obscurations they cause be completely purified, every single one. May I be freed from karma, harmful emotions, and the work of negativity, and act for all beings in this world. Just like the lotus flower to which mud and water cannot cling, or sun and moon that course unhindered through the sky, throughout the reach and range of the entire universe, I shall pacify completely the suffering of all the lower realms. I shall lead all beings to happiness and work for the ultimate benefit of each and every one. I shall bring enlightened action to perfection, serve beings so as to suit their needs, teach them to accomplish good actions, and to continue thus throughout all the eons to come. May I always meet and be accompanied by those whose actions accord with mine, and in body, speech, and mind as well, may our actions and aspirations always be one. May I always meet spiritual friends who long to be of true help to me and who teach me the good actions. Never will I disappoint them. May I always behold the Buddhas before my eyes, and around them all their Bodhisattva sons and daughters, without ever tiring throughout all the eons to come. May the offerings I make them be endless and vast. May I maintain the sacred teachings of the Buddha, cause enlightened action to appear. May I train to perfection in good actions and practice these in every age to come. As I wander through all states of samsaric existence, may I gather inexhaustible merit and wisdom, and so become an exhaustible treasury of noble qualities of skill and discernment, samadhi, and liberation. In a single atom, may I see as many pure realms as atoms in the universe, and in each realm, Buddhas beyond all imagining, encircled by all their bodhisattva heirs. Along with them, may I perform the actions of enlightenment. And so, in each direction, everywhere, even on the tip of a hair, may I see an ocean of Buddhas. all to come in past, present, and future in an ocean of pure realms, and throughout an ocean of eons, may I enter into enlightened action in each and every one. Each and single word of a Buddha's speech, that voice with its ocean of qualities, bears all the purity of the speech of all the Buddhas, sounds that harmonize with the minds of all living beings. May I always be engaged with the speech of the Buddhas. With all the power of my mind, may I hear and realize the inexhaustible melody of the teachings spoken by all the Buddhas of past, present, and future. And as they turn the wheels of Dharma, just as the wisdom of the Buddhas penetrates all future eons, so may I too know them instantly. In each fraction of an instant, may I know all that will ever be in past, present, and future. In an instant, may I behold all those who are the lions of the human race, the Buddhas of past, present, and future. May I always be engaged in the Buddha's way of life and action through the power of liberation, where all is realized as like an illusion. On a single atom, may I actually bring about the entire array of pure realms of past, present, and future, and then enter into those Buddha realms in each atom in each and every direction. When those who illuminate the world still come, gradually attain Buddhahood, turn the wheel of Dharma, and demonstrate the final profound peace of nirvana, may I always be in their presence. Through the power of the swift miracles, the power of the vehicle like a doorway, power of conduct that possesses all virtuous actions, the power of loving kindness, all pervasive, the power of merit that is totally virtuous, the power of wisdom free from attachment, the power of knowledge, skillful means, and samadhi, may I perfectly accomplish the power of enlightenment. May I purify the power of karma, destroy the power of harmful emotions, render negatively, utterly powerless, and the power of good actions. I shall purify oceans of realms, liberate oceans of sentient beings, understand oceans of Dharma, realize oceans of wisdom, perfect oceans of actions, fulfill oceans of aspirations, serve oceans of Buddhas, and perform these without ever growing weary through oceans of eons. All the Buddhas throughout the whole of time attained enlightenment through good actions, and their prayers and aspirations for enlightened actions, may I fulfill them all completely. The eldest of the sons of all the Buddhas is called Samantabhadra, all good. So that I may act with a skill like his, I dedicate fully all these merits. To purify my body, my speech, and my mind as well, to purify my actions in all realms, may I be equal of Samantabhadra in his skill of good dedication. In order to perform the full virtue of good actions, I shall act according to Manjushri's pair of aspiration. Without ever growing weary in all the same eons to come, I shall perfectly fulfill every one of his aims. Let my bodhisattva acts be beyond measure. Let my enlightened qualities be measureless too. Keeping to this immeasurable activity, may I accomplish all the miraculous powers of enlightenment. Sentient beings are as limitless as the boundless expanse of space, so shall my prayers of aspiration for them be as limitless as their karma and harmful actions. Whoever hears this king of dedication prayers and yearns for supreme enlightenment, who even once arouses faith, will gain true merit, greater still than by offering the victorious Buddha's infinite pure realms in every direction, all ornamented with jewels, or offering them all the highest joys of gods and humans, for as many eons as there are atoms in those realms. Whoever truly makes this aspiration to good actions will never again be born in the lower realms. They will be free from the harmful companions and soon behold the Buddha of boundless light. They will acquire all kinds of benefits and live in happiness. Even in this present life, all will go well. And before long, they will become just like Samantabhadra. All negative acts, even the 5 of immediate retribution, whatever they have committed in the grip of ignorance, will soon completely purified if they recite this aspiration to good actions. They will possess wisdom, beauty, and excellent signs, be born in a good family with radiant appearance. Demons and heretics will never harm them, and all 3 worlds will honor them with offerings. They will quickly go beneath the Bodhi tree, and there they will sit to benefit all sentient beings, then awaken into enlightenment, turn the wheel of Dharma, and Tame Mara for all his hordes. The full result of keeping, teaching, or reading the prayer of aspiration to good actions is known to all the Buddhas alone. Have no doubt, supreme enlightenment will be yours. Just as the Bodhisattvas Manjushri attained omniscience, and Samantabhadras too, all these merits now I dedicate to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of past, present, and future praise, dedicate, and supreme. And so now I dedicate all these roots of virtue for all beings to perfect good actions. When it is time for me to die, let all that obscures me fade away. So I look at Amitabha there in person and go at once to his pure land of Vesak. May I actualize every single one of all these aspirations. May I fulfill them, each and every one, and bring help to beings for as long as the universe remains. Born there in a beautiful lotus flower in that excellent and joyous pure Buddha realm, may the Buddha Amitabha himself grant me the prophecy foretelling my enlightenment. Having received the prophecy there with my billions of emanations sent out through the power of my mind, may I bring enormous benefit to sentient beings in all 10 directions. Through whatever small virtues I have gained by reciting the aspiration of good actions, may the virtuous wishes of all beings' prayers and aspirations all be instantly accomplished. Through the true and boundless merit attained by dedicating this aspiration to good actions, may all those now drowning in the ocean of suffering reach the supreme realm of Amitabha. May this king aspirations bring about the supreme aim and benefit of all infinite sentient beings. May they perfect what is described in this holy prayer uttered by Samantabhadra. May the lower realms be entirely emptied. By the blessings of the Buddhas who have attained the three kayas and the unchanging truth of reality, as well as the unwavering aspirations of the Sangha, may all the aspirations and dedication prayers be fulfilled. Teata penza indriya awa bodhanai soha. So such a wonderful aspiration, right? Really just contains everything. And then you can see when we talk about Rinpoche, going to a pure land and so forth. We see. So when you see the story of the meeting with Samantabhadra, there's this realization that you read actually in the Prayer of Noble Conduct, where you see the Buddha realms in each pore. That's actually what Siddhana has experienced. He's actually realizing this simultaneously. So there's a, I don't know how it works. I'm not a scholar at that, but in the story, Siddhana is having a realization that Samantabhadra's pores are even Buddha fields, and you see that here, and then it says born there in a beautiful lotus flower, meaning in a pure land. We say that Rinpoche is abiding in a pure land. So how do we see Rinpoche again? If Rinpoche is abiding in a pure land, what goes on? It says, may Amitabha himself grant me the prophecy fulfilling my enlightenment. So tell me the exact day, what's the day? When will I be enlightened? What's my prophecy, right? That's what it's saying in here, or there's a lot of options, but having received the prophecy there with my billions of emanations sent out through the power of my mind, may I bring enormous benefit to sentient beings in all directions. So when we think about our Rinpoche, right? We think about it in terms of our or my teacher. We have to understand that if we believe this stuff we're studying and believe that our teacher is this being, that's a high level bodhisattva, on bodhisattva grounds, those bodhisattvas can emanate bodies. And those bodhisattvas are working for the needs of all sentient beings. So when we were seeing potentially, right, like just kind of bear with me, potentially while we were seeing Rinpoche here and manifesting in a body that we saw, potentially he was in a pure land already, just emanating that body, as well as millions and millions of other bodies to other places, to other sentient beings at the same time, not looking like that. So when Thupten Chodron the other night was talking about connecting with the omniscient mind of the teacher, if we believe this stuff that we're studying, and we get at least ourselves to a point where we think maybe it's possible our teacher is this, right? well, then if that's what we think is possible, and then we think because it's possible, and then we think it's probable, and then we think it probably, it is, then we have to know that this being is helping others in just as direct and personal way at the same time in different forms, and kind of chuckle at ourselves when we become attached to this one little thing they threw out to help us with, because they'll help us again because they helped us already. We have that connection, and they're bodhisattvas and they work for the sake of sentient beings. But when a bodhisattva or a Buddha emanates into a human body, it's a human body. So the human body, goes away, and then, what appeared to be who they were goes away, but who they were, in theory, was just a being in a different place altogether, emanating this body from their mind, right? So it gets complicated, but look at what an amazing thing a bodhisattva could do potentially. And that's just a bodhisattva. We're not even talking about the power of a Buddha. We're talking of a being that's still, in samsara, can do all of this stuff. Debatable on which grounds and things. So, but a being who is not a Buddha yet, right? Who still has an impure continuum, meaning obstructions to omniscience, can do all these miraculous things already, and how wonderful that is. So that really sets us up for doing this mantra recitation, because we should be doing this for the sake of all sentient beings. We're doing this mantra recitation. We're meditating on this for the sake of sentient beings. When the realization within this Samantabhadra's dedication, or the prayer of noble conduct, is that this union is necessary of method and wisdom. You need to have both the method of the compassion and the bodhisattva deeds, and that has to be united with wisdom. So these bodhisattva deeds that we're doing for the sake of all sentient beings, a bodhisattva realizes that the compassion, first, when we look at how compassion, the levels of it, first, the great compassion, the bodhisattva has compassion, which has as his or her object of observation sentient beings, just sentient beings. And then the realization gets a little more advanced, impermanent sentient beings. So the bodhisattva, develops compassion for impermanent sentient beings. And then the bodhisattva develops compassion for empty sentient beings, but sees how that emptiness, allows for suffering to occur because of dependent origination, right? So at the highest level, one is realizing that this Samantabhadra dedication, this aspiration itself, is empty of true establishment. The one aspiring to it is empty of true establishment, right? So the aspiration, the aspirer, what one is aspiring to, are all empty of true establishment. So the action, the agent, and the object, in fancier terms, are all empty of true establishment. So the bodhisattva sees that while they're engaging in all of this virtue and accumulating merit, none of the merit is truly established because it dependently originates. None of the accumulation of it is truly established because it dependently originates. The bodhisattva understands that all of these activities of generosity and ethics and patience and effort and concentration and wisdom are all empty, and even emptiness is empty. So it's important not to cling to true establishment, but not to land on nihilism. And that's what the union of calm abiding and special insight arrives at, is this place that can see that things exist, but actually see that they're also empty, and they can exist because they're empty. And that's where one lands and then puts single pointed concentration and unites it with that space that understands that lack of true establishment. And that's not a nothingness space. That's just a space that understands the absence of a true self. It's the basis of negation is a substantially existent self that is arisen from self, other, a combination of both, or causeless. So that's the object of negation. So it starts with, okay, yes, I am a truly existent person. Where is that person? So you have to start, the Tsongkhapa's tradition deconstructs the subject, as opposed to starting with, the subject's empty. It starts, the subject substantially existent. Now prove that, find that, and then deconstruct that, but don't land at nihilism, understand its dependent origination. So anyway, so from that idea of things dependently originate, they dependently originate through causes and condition. They, so we see, cause and effect happening. So we can see that's a kind of dependent origination. And then a dependence is the kind of dependent origination. In order for there to be other, right, there has to be me, so there's a dependence there. In order for there to be short, there has to be taller, right? There's a dependence there. So we see there's emptiness like that. And then there's the emptiness of collection and nominal designation, right? So it's from that emptiness where we start visualization of Tantrayana. So we're going to do mantras of Tara. Everyone, I think, has the permission to do self-generation. But if you don't, in the visualization that I give, just do front generation, and don't imagine like a simultaneous kind of arisal. So just now something really very basic. Get into the posture we've talked about, the 7-point Vairakana posture, if you can. Now is kind of like we're getting into the territory where it is starting to matter more, right? We're getting into Tantra, into Action Tantra, Kriya Tantra, where, we start to work with winds, and we do bring winds from the top and the bottom and unite them in that. So it's important that we align our body in specific ways. If we want to leave the imprints to be able to really do a Tara practice. But what we can do is we get into this position. Let's start with taking 3 deep breaths through our nostril, but deep meaning like full breaths. Bring it all the way to the top of the breath, and do that about 3 times or so. We'll start there. Now keep breathing in and out in kind of a normal fashion, kind of focusing on the breath, but now start to do a little bit of analysis. Start to think about dependent origination. Think about the selflessness of person, emptiness of person. Think about the emptiness of all phenomena. Think about how all person and phenomena dependently originate, if they exist, whether they're impermanent or permanent, whether they dependently originate in terms of being caused, or in terms of interdependence or dependence, or in terms of collections that we're naming. And the Madhyamika Prasangika view feels that it's merely a collection that's named, that has no inherent existence, no inherent establishment from its own side. It's merely an object of apprehension that exists, that, for instance, a form, an eye consciousness apprehends, and then the mental consciousness kind of makes its determination about it, and then names it, and then thinks about it and gives it qualities and so forth. But there is no object that has those qualities from its own side. It's merely a name that's put on a collection. We don't say that that collection has any this or that inherently, conventionally, or ultimately within it. So let's, as we're sitting, meditate a little bit on emptiness and what that means. And as we're trying to find this substantially existent person, and we're starting to take it apart, we shouldn't land at a place of non-existence, because we know the prasangika view establishes things as existent, external objects as existent. So from the emptiness, imagine that at our heart, or in the space in front of us, or both, that is syllable Hri. So if you're doing both, Rinpoche always told me and instructed me at the end that if you can hold the front generation, it's really important as you're doing self-generation, almost like a mirror. So this is a way you can do it if you have the initiation. Imagine that this arisal is almost like a mirror in front of you. So imagine that there's a lotus and a moon disk, the sun and moon disk, right in front of you, with the syllable tam on it. So your heart, and then you could have a mirror almost in front of you, an arm length in front of you, kind of at your kind of eye level. Imagine it there, almost like it's a smaller mirror of you. It will become a mirror of what is at your heart. And imagine that from that syllable tam and the emptiness that you're meditating on. So you from this emptiness, you imagine that this lotus and moon disk and sun disk and tam emerge through dependent origination. We imagine this arisal, and we're focusing on that at our heart and front generation. And then imagine that from that syllable tam, we instantaneously turn into White Tara herself. Imagine that we have two eyes, normal eyes, and one in the center at the third eye. We imagine that our right and left hands have eyes, and our feet have eyes, and we're in the posture, the full lotus posture that White Tara sits in, holding the flower petal, holding flower stem with three petals, three flowers coming off of it, symbolizing the Buddha, the past, present, and future. And then imagine your hand and or front generation hand out in this kind of on your knee, in the hand of giving or helping. Sometimes it is the outstretching the hand to help. So we have White Tara in the self and front generation, ideally imagined. And then you can also imagine that in the front generation, a special meditation Trijang gives is that you can imagine that the guru, who's inseparable from White Tara, is on a kind of a lotus throne, just kind of above White Tara. So White Tara is kind of just sitting in front of the Lama, if you will, not much lower, just kind of sitting in front of the Lama. And then you imagine on your left, but on the Lama's right, it would be Buddha Shakyamuni. And you imagine that behind that are stacks of texts. And you imagine that to the Lama's left, your right, there are the Arya Bodhisattvas, and so forth. So you can imagine this kind of field in front of you that's mirroring you as Tara. And then you have around, you on the self generation, but in front of you, front generation, definitely the representation of the Lama, the Buddha, meaning Shakyamuni, the Dharma being behind the Lama, and the Sangha, meaning the Arya Bodhisattvas, those beings who have seen emptiness. So we can imagine that, or just merely imagine ourselves as Tara with a mirror image in front of us, or just imagine ourselves as Tara only, or just imagine Tara in front of us, whatever you're comfortable with. But just remember, as you're meditating, you have this pride of being the deity, and not in a negative way. It means that you actually believe you're this enlightened being. You believe you're this being as you're doing these mantras that has the ability to do special activities. So when you're generating yourself as the deity and you're doing mantras, you're not just laying idle and meditating on yourself as a deity and reciting some things. As you're doing the mantras, you're imagining that the mantras are circumambulating this syllable tam that's at your heart. You imagine Om Tare Tu Re Soha is circumambulating at your heart. There's many, many visualizations, but then you imagine that that mantra garland can go out in the form of light rays to all sentient beings and give them happiness and so forth, and transform them into Tara state. And you can imagine that the tips of those rays make offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then the light rays come back. A lot of different visualizations you can do, but you just imagine that you get all the power of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they sometimes say the light then sweeps by sentient beings and takes their suffering, because it's kind of like a Tonglen practice, because you just gave them happiness in the form of mantra and light. And then it made offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and repowered, if you will, this force of light and nectar sometimes that comes back through sentient beings and once again takes away their suffering and then empowers you even more and more and more. And you're doing this in kind of rounds. And then the other visualizations that you do are the ones you learn when you're doing the actual initiation. They are a little varying, but Trijung Rinpoche's visualizations are that you have Amitayas on your crown as you're doing the mantras, and you imagine from the syllable Hri at Amitayas that these rays are going out and collecting all of the lost life force. Does this sound familiar? And then going into Amitayas's nectar bowl as you're doing the mantras. And then this nectar bowl is then through your Brahma hole, bringing in all of the life force that you've lost. So you're doing this visualization that we do during the initiation with Rinpoche all the time while you're doing the actual mantra recitation. So you're imagining that. And then the earth, water, earth, water, wind, fire, space, right? We have that part where we have all of the elements being restored. So we imagine that the same visualization from Amitayas rather, from the syllable Hri, that these light rays radiate and then bring all of the elements back into the bowl of Amitayas. And then from the bowl kind of boils over and all of earth, water, wind, fire, and space elements go into our Brahma hole and restore them as we're doing Om Tare Tu Re Soha. And then we imagine that all the power of the moon, stars, and so forth in the same visualization go into our Brahma hole. Then we imagine all of the initiations of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth are requested, from our heart as Tara, right? As just in the initiation. And we imagine that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas give us those initiations and purify our body, speech, and mind with a white rays going to our crown, purifying our body, and red rays going to our throat and purifying our speech, and blue rays going to our heart center and purifying our mind. And we're imagining that we're initiated into all of these things, where our body, speech, and mind are being initiated as we're doing mantras. And then it concludes really with a visualization where we're imagining that the whole merit field of the front generation dissolves right into Tara, goes to the top of our head, and then starts bringing second Taras into us and dissolving into us. At each mantra we do, Om Tari Tu Tari Tu Re Soha, Om Tari Tu Tari Tu Re Soha, Om Tari Tu Tari Tu Re Soha. So each time you say the mantra, you're imagining the taras on your crown dissolving into you. And you're doing all of this for the sake of sentient beings and understanding that even though you have this pride of the deity and you're doing these visualizations and you're doing it for sentient beings and for your purification and long life, they are empty, but exist, right? So we're doing this so we can eventually actually have the ability to benefit beings with light somehow. We can learn that later, but somehow Buddhists can emanate different lights, and they can emanate sounds and that come in the form of different things and teach, and they can emanate whatever needs to be emanated to help. So by us doing this, we will eventually be able to do that. Does that make any sense? So anyway, let's start. Again, we're visualizing, as just mentioned, as much as we can. I wanted to give you some of the extra kind of inspirational ideas for your practice. If your practice is feeling like, well, what am I kind of doing? Well, that's what you can be doing. And if you think about the initiations we've had over and over again, even if you haven't read any of these books, you can at least remember a part of it and just imagine that as you're doing the mantras. If you can imagine even Amitayas on your crown and that your Tara, how wonderful, right? You can a syllable tam, and a syllable hri, just build it. It's like building blocks, and just be easy on yourself, because this is just something that these visualizations aren't, that most of the time the lamas are reading them. They're not, they're very detailed visualizations. I mean, sooner or later you memorize them, right? But they're very detailed. So the way you learn how to do it is you study it. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. You got to study it. If you don't study, you won't know this stuff. So, all right, let's get started. We'll do 108 Tara mantras together. Jetsindromo Lashatse hello. Om Tare Tu Re Soha. 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 Tare Tu Re Soha. Om 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 Tare Tu Re Soha. Tare du re so om tare du re so om tare du re so om tare du re so tare du re so om 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 tare Om Dare Du Re So 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 Dare Du Re So Om Dare Du Re So Om Dare Du Re So Om Dare Du Re So Dare du re so om dare du re so om dare du re so om dare du re so dare du re so om dare du re so dare du re so om 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 dare du re so Dare du re so om 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 dare du re so dare du re so om dare du re so om dare du re so om dare du
dare do re so om dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so dare do re so om 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 dare do re so. Om Benzazatva Samaya Madhubalaya Benzazatva Sena Bhati Shadito Me Baba Sudogaya Me Baba Subhagayo Me Baba Anuratu Me Baba Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Gama Suja Me Gitanji Anguru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Data Gata Penza Mame Monka Penza Baba Mahasamaya Zapa Aum Ve. Thank you so much, everyone. The Vajrasattva mantra is done at the end just to make sure there are any mistakes made or any omissions or, anything that, I did wrong from the side, my side, or that from your side, you may have done wrong or, or could have done better, right? Or maybe our mind wandered and we thought about some other stuff, when we could have been, thinking in a pure way like Samantabhadra. So it's, like this. So yes, thank you. Anybody have any questions? I think we'll end. I know it's late, but does anybody want to say anything? Any questions?
Yeah, Jeff, I got a quick question. So with this lunar eclipse, this is extremely rare, I believe, right? Landing on this kind of auspicious day and then having a full moon at the same time.
I don't know from an astrologer. I don't know. You'd have to speak to someone who knows about that stuff. I just, all the conditions are together at this point for the best practice, in terms of our channels and stuff. But scientifically, the rarity and how often it occurs, I'm sure you can Google it. But I don't think that an eclipse is something so rare. But I don't know how often it occurs.
No, I don't really mean the eclipse. I kind of just mean like it. I mean, what are the odds of it falling on a day like this? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty rare.
Yeah,
It's
it
pretty
feels
rare
rare.
that we're here doing it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
hearing about it and so forth. So yeah, absolutely, really, really wonderful.
cool.
And so valuable. So think about, we just sat here for probably an hour and a half, feels like it. And
Yeah,
you know, we just created so much virtue. We said the things that Samantabhadra says. We said the things that, you know, the highest bodhisattva that Buddha could find, right, to talk about in terms of making aspirations and deeds and so forth. You know, we said what that great being said today for an hour and a half. So really, everyone, please rejoice. You know, Tsongkhapa said that's the easiest thing to do, right? And the thing that we can get the most merit. Rejoice in our good, rejoice in all the holy things that people do and have done. And if we can just, you know, find joy and goodness, it will remind our minds to be good later. So let's do some dedications. Just real quickly, I'll do a dedication, then we'll go. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, the source of all benefit and happiness for sentient beings, all powerful, Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. May we quickly, swiftly be reunited with Kensur Geshe Wanda. May he teach us in all of our lives, whatever his name is at that time, and whatever, you know, his pure Buddha name is now. May that pure Buddha that is abiding in a pure land, whether it be a bodhisattva or, you know, on the grounds, or a fully realized Buddha, emanate and help us and drag us out of samsara whilst dragging everyone else out too. So we not only want to unite with Rinpoche, you know, for ourselves, but why are we learning? For the sake of all sentient beings. So we want to reunite with Rinpoche for the sake of all sentient beings. He's reuniting with us because he's working for the sake of all sentient beings, and we happen to be sentient beings. So it's a perfect match. So thank you, everyone. And hopefully through the power of this prayer, may we all be connected to Rinpoche and get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience through a very swift path. And thank you. Oh, I see hands up. Hold on. Priscilla's hands up.
I can answer Coleman's question.
Yeah.
Tibetans and Tibetan Buddhism follows a lunar calendar, unlike the Roman calendar of the United States and Europe, whatever. Follows a lunar calendar, and the holidays will fall on a full moon day. The unusual thing is the total eclipse.
Thank you for that,
so-
Priscilla.
Yeah, this holiday is always on a full moon.
Oh, wow, okay.
And when we have the new year, it goes either from new moon to full moon or from full moon to new moon. I don't know which. I can't remember.
Thank
But
you, Priscilla.
following that 15-day period.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you look at the different holidays, if you look up the Tibetan calendar or something like that, I think you will find that the really auspicious holidays all fall on a new moon. Yeah, so
Very cool.
I don't know, like I said, I can't remember whether Losar starts on a full moon or starts on the new moon and then goes to the full moon. It's one or the other.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why you see the important days, the 15th, the 30th, when you have the holy days. But Alessandra, you have your hand up. I didn't want this to be a repeat. Yes.
I just wanted to, I don't have a question. I just want to really thank you, everyone, because this was just beautiful and I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it because everyone coming, like dependent origination, forced me to do the prayer, forced, us to do it together. And I was so happy. We can do things like this more often. And this is like a pop-up prayer. And you see these things pop up. We'll try, we're going to get in a little bit better pattern that's, more definite, but, like, I don't know. Who knows what's going on in folks' days? Maybe a pop-up prayer is needed. So if you get a pop-up prayer from Jeff, don't be like, I have to go, or he's, I have to attend tonight, or he's going to be really sad or upset. That's not the case. It's just, you want to go to a pop-up prayer? We got a pop-up prayer. They sell shoes this way, for God's sakes. We should be able to do, if we can go get shoes, pop-up shoes, and other things they have pop-ups for, we all know about. We should be able to do a pop-up to do prayer, right? I don't know. We don't have to be so rigid, but we will be rigid with like the majority of it. But I kind of like this idea of pop-up prayer. So
I do
thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
It was very special to,
Yeah.
and I think very important to have something for celebrating Buddha's birth, parinirvana and death. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody, get some sleep. Good night. Thank you so much. Thursday night, don't forget Bodhicitta class, Pension Sonandrapa, general meaning of perfection. We're going to get into the mental basis and then the causes. So stay tuned. We'll see you then.
Thank you, Jen. Thank
Bye.
you.